All right, we are live. Hello. Just gonna get some stuff set up here. Thank you for bearing with me a little late tonight because I'm a Chicago Cubs fan, so I had to watch the end of that game. Let me just pull up a few things here and we will go ahead and get started. I have Den here who is helping out with the moderation. So if you have any questions, comments, please go ahead and leave them in the YouTube comments. We will get to them in between stories. And before I start, I also want to tell you right behind me, right up there, you may see this book, Atheism for Dummies. It's written by my friend Dale McGowan. It's a really, even though it's one of those like introductory atheism books that kind of teaches people who may not know much about it, what it's about, how it's relevant in the culture, things like that. Dale just wrote version 2.0 and it just came out. If you, I know it doesn't feel like a book you're supposed to read. It's like, it feels like you're looking at a dictionary or something, but I'm telling you, it's a really good book to just read if you're interested in atheism. And so, version 2 of Atheism for Dummies is out this month. Check it out. Okay, I have so many things that we are going to talk about. And let me start with some breaking news that just came up a couple of hours ago. And let me see if I could pull it up here. It involves, let me talk about this guy right here. This is Robert Morris. And the last time I talked about this guy may have been several months ago. But in case you need a primer on this guy, I'm talking about him because he just pleaded guilty to a very serious charge. And I'll talk about that in a second. But the thing you need to know about Robert Morris is that he's a very powerful evangelical Christian. When Donald Trump was trying to convince conservative Christians to support his presidential campaign in 2016, which there was a time when that wasn't a given, he released a list of his evangelical executive advisory board. Guess what? Robert Morris was on that list. And in fact, later on in the White House, as you could see right here, Robert Morris, right over there, he is one of these dudes who's in the room when everyone's putting their hands on Trump. But Morris is a sort of evangelical Christian who thinks his prayers can cure infertility, which is not how it works. He says it's scientifically impossible to be an atheist, which is news to everybody. He says trans people are a threat to children. And that's one you're going to want to remember in just a second when I tell you what he did. But in any way, what happened is that a few years ago, actually, I should say, like in 2024, a website called the Wartburg Watch, which is kind of a watchdog group for what happens in Christian culture, they shared a story from a woman named Cindy Clemishire. And I can say her name because she's gone public with all this. And Cindy's story was that in 1981, when she was only 11 years old, Robert Morris at the time was just a traveling evangelist, and he was visiting Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he met her family. And Robert Morris and his wife and his son, they ended up staying a lot of times with Cindy's family. They became very close. Well, Cindy said that on Christmas Day in 1982, the families had known each other for about a year at this point. Robert Morris allegedly invited Cindy to come to his bedroom where he proceeded to do very bad things to her. And then he told her, quote, never tell anyone about this because it will ruin everything. And she was a little girl at the time. She did not know any better. One of the reasons Robert Morris was able to get away with this, because it kept going for years, is he told his wife he was counseling the little girl. So this continued for years until like 1987. And at one point, Cindy told a friend of hers what had happened. News got back to Cindy's father, and the father was thankfully just furious at Robert Morris. He told him, get out of the ministry. So Robert Morris stepped down for 2 years, just went away. And when he finally returned to preaching, he started up a church that became known as Gateway church, and this is where he became famous later on. It wasn't until Cindy got much older that she kind of realized the way she had been victimized, what he had done to her. And this is what the Wartburg Watch said that I want to share with you here. In 2005, she obtained an attorney to file a civil lawsuit. Robert Morris's attorney responded by implying that they believed it was her fault because she was flirtatious. She was 12. She asked for $50,000 for this NDA, and they responded that they would give her $25,000, but only if she signed an NDA. She refused, so here she is telling her side of the story. That's why we know any of this happened, because Robert Morris and his lawyers thought they could shut this girl up. And listen, I'm not going to go over every detail about what happened because I've made a video about this. I will link it down below. But basically, what that statement said, it's appalling for so many reasons. One being that Morris's attorney was blaming a child for luring him. She was 12. She cannot legally consent. She was not flirting with him. What the hell? Anyway, when the Christian Post media outlet asked Robert Morris, hey, do you have any comment about these pretty damning allegations against you? This is what Robert Morris told the Christian media outlet. When I was in my early 20s, I was involved in inappropriate sexual behavior with a young lady, she was 12, in a home where I was staying. It was kissing and petting and not intercourse, but it was wrong. This behavior happened on several occasions over the next few years. But don't worry, everyone. Look down here. Since that time, I have walked in purity and accountability in this area. And then, you guys, he went on to say that he left the ministry for 2 years because Cindy's dad basically told him to. And when he returned, look at this, 2 years after his abuse was exposed, with the blessing of the survivor's father and the elders of his church. That's when he came back. He got the okay from Cindy's dad. He further noted that he and his wife met with Cindy and her family in October of 1989. I asked their forgiveness, and they graciously forgave me. That sounds weird. And if that sounds weird, it's because it definitely did not happen. In fact, the Christian Post reached out to Cindy, who said none of that is true. The survivor made it clear to the Christian Post that Morris did not get her father's blessing to return to ministry. My father never ever gave his blessing on Robert returning to ministry. My father told him he's lucky he didn't kill him. I'm mortified that he's telling the world my dad gave his blessing. Of course we forgive because we are called to biblically forgive those who sin against us, but that doesn't mean he's supposed to go on without repercussions. Okay, so that's where the allegations came from. This goes on. The church says we're going to investigate it. They insist. The elders at the church say, you guys, we didn't know any of this happened. Even though Robert Morris is like, I told everybody what happened, and they believe I am pure now, and that's why I'm allowed to be the senior pastor of Gateway. So all this, and Gateway Church elders are like, we didn't know any of that. We didn't know she was 12. But they do an investigation. The church eventually removes several elders who absolutely knew that this girl was underage, but didn't do anything about it. But in any case, it's been 35 years since all this happened, and there was an open question of, he's a really powerful white Christian pastor. Is anything seriously going to happen to this guy? Because, he's a conservative. There are very few repercussions these days if you're a white Christian who breaks the law and you happen to be a friend of the Trump administration. You know what I mean? So the irony to all this is Robert Morris has spent years preaching about sexual ethics and sin. He promoted Donald Trump, who did all the things Morris urged people not to do because Christians love hypocrisy. But what was interesting in the last time I talked about this is that because all this happened in Oklahoma, even though Gateway Church is in Texas, because the abuse happened in Oklahoma, there was an investigation in Oklahoma from that state's Republican attorney general. And guess what? The grand jury heard the testimony and they indicted Morris on 5 counts. Specifically, what they said, and I can show you this, I've read this before, it is disturbing stuff, but here you go. The indictment said on December 25th, 1982, he touched very private areas of this 12-year-old girl. December 27th, 2 days later, he removed her clothes and looked at those areas in a lewd or lascivious manner. Then, between weeks in January after that, he touched those areas again. Sometime over the next 2 years, he touched the girl's areas in a lewd or lascivious manner while parked in a car. And also, over those next 2 years, he touched her by removing her clothing and rubbing his body, including his private parts, covered by his clothing against her body, including her leg, while parked in a car. So that is what the grand jury indicted him for. It was horrific. Clemishire, by the way, she's in her 50s now. She's a grandmother, but there was some semblance of justice that this guy got indicted. And the question is, what happens now? Well, what happened after that indictment is that they could pursue charges on this guy. And the charges said he could face jail time. He could face lots of it, up to 100 years behind bars, because it was like 20 years for each of those felony counts against him. Or because of who he is and how powerful he is, it was very possible he could get nothing. So the reason I wanted to talk about this is because just this afternoon, this is the headline that I saw. Robert Morris, Texas megachurch pastor, pleads guilty to abusing a child. And specifically, there's a couple things I want to show you here. I'll scroll down past the description of everything. At his first court appearance in May, Morris pleaded not guilty and was released on a $50,000 bond. Last month, he waived his preliminary hearing, a signal that his defense team and prosecutors were engaging in plea negotiations. And today, those talks ended with a guilty plea from Robert Morris. Okay, so the question you're wondering is, okay, is this guy actually going to get punished? He's pleading guilty. What's going to happen to him? I don't know if this is good news or bad news, but here's the news. I'm going to skip down here. Oops, I skipped the important part, which is right up at the top. Let me jump right there. Here we go. Robert Morris entered the plea, and under a negotiated plea agreement, he was given a 10-year sentence, but he's only going to serve 6 months in the county jail. He must also register as a sex offender and pay $250,000 in restitution. So, at the end of all this, everything I just told you, this guy will spend about 6 months in jail. And he's a registered sex offender. And he has to pay some money, but honestly, $250,000 for a guy like him, that's probably nothing. It's 6 months. And the reason I say I don't know if this is good or bad is because I was seriously worried the alternative was he would do no time in prison. Because as far as we could tell, it's not like this was one victim, but there are many more who have not spoken up. As far as we know, this is the only person he has victimized. So maybe that's the reason for this plea deal. Also, the fact that this guy is now a registered sex offender, he's not going to be able to get a job at a church, you would think, but you never know. These guys will go away for a few months. Who knows? After 6 months, Robert Morris comes back, does one of those I'm forgiven by Jesus tours, and then starts up a new church somewhere else. That could happen. But at least there is some justice in the sense that if you think the alternative was doing nothing, well, here's a guy who's going to go to jail now. And, you know, that is more than you could expect in a lot of these cases. And the fact that, yeah, this guy's in the news everywhere. He can't really get away from this. This part really, the tears will spill when you read what Cindy said in court. In a prepared statement, Clemishire told Robert Morris in court his abuse rippled into every part of her life, straining relationships, damaging her marriages, and affecting the way she raised her children. She said she prayed that God helped him to understand the depth of the pain he inflicted. Morris's eyes were fixed on the table in front of him. He's not even looking at her, as Clemenshire, speaking through tears, faced him during her remarks. Let me be clear, she said. There is no such thing as consent from a 12-year-old child, which is apparently a thing that prominent white evangelical pastors don't know. We were never in an inappropriate relationship. I was not a young lady, but a child. You committed a crime against me. And then her sister, Karen Black, also said, you pretended to be holy, preaching from big pulpits. As you hid behind your facade, we've known you are nothing but a predator. So, this guy's going to jail for 6 months. I do find it interesting that in the midst of all of this, there was other stuff happening. Earlier this year, Robert Morris sued Gateway. He sued the church, saying they owe me millions of dollars in retirement money, alleging that the church mishandled his resignation and damaged his reputation. Just think about what's the word for that sort of statement? This man, who is now an admitted sexual predator and registered sex offender, is like, hey, church, when you said you had to get rid of me for, reasons, you hurt my reputation. My dude, you hurt your reputation. Gateway has denied Morris's claims, saying his demands do not reflect accountability for the impact of his actions on the community, but that lawsuit is still pending. By the way, I think there's another lawsuit against Gateway Church from former members who say their tithe money was used inappropriately. I don't know the status of that particular lawsuit right now. But here's the good news. There's some justice for all the people. I mean, the courage it took for Cindy to speak out after all these years, after hiding it in for decades, and then to speak out publicly and use her name when doing it, and to see the Oklahoma Attorney General pursuing these charges, and for a grand jury to indict him, and for a judge now to oversee him pleading guilty to this. Huge. That is huge. You rarely see that when it's deserved. And again, we can argue about that jail sentence is not long enough, but I feel like we should not be comparing 6 months to like the potential of 10 years behind bars. I think you got to compare 6 months to the very real possibility that he might have spent no time in prison. So I don't know. The 6 months almost seems symbolic, but it's something. It is meaningful. He should not have any sort of public life after he's out of jail. So I will stop there for now. I just wanted to bring that to your attention because it just happened as I was heading home today to get ready for this. Any questions here before I move on to a different story? A travesty of justice. I mean, the fact that he wasn't convicted for so long, the fact that he could build his career and become so close that the future president is calling you for advice, that should never have happened. So again, is it a travesty, or the fact that something happened counts as justice in some way? At this point, I'll take what I can get, and I'm not even affected directly by this story. Well, at least people will know the truth now about him and can't deny it. And I agree with you, and I hope that's true. And at the same time, I also think, whatever, everyone knows the truth about Donald Trump, and a bunch of idiots still voted for him last time around. So, when, again, with a certain type of people, the sort of people who attend white evangelical churches, there is nothing you can do that you can't follow up with by saying, God forgave me, and then they'll forgive you. Like, what does it take for these people to realize you're a monster? Because Trump has done everything that's bad, and they don't have the values to know that. So, I mean, yeah, the truth is out there. You can't deny it, but I feel like that only applies to people who actually care about facts and justice and things like that. And I don't know that a lot of white evangelicals do right now. Thanks for becoming a YouTube member, Bill. I appreciate that. So the Cubs won. Yeah, they did. I got to watch the very end of this before I started this live stream. Very close. Padres were good. Cubs this year, a little better. We'll see. We'll see about the next series. That's going to be hard. Anyway, let me jump to a different story here. Yes. I have another update for you. Okay. Oh, go ahead and do this while I get some water. Oh, dear God. This is a bad question to ask after the last story. That is what I feared, and I don't love it. All right. I wanted to share an update for you regarding the rapture. Last week, I got on this live stream and I told you that there was a very serious concern last week that the rapture was going to happen on September, was it 23rd or 24th, one of those days? And of course, that day came and went, and the rapture did not happen. Or at least, if it did happen, well, we're still stuck with the Christians, so I guess we were all left behind. But the person who really sparked the belief that people had that the rapture was going to happen last week was a South African preacher named Joshua Mahalakela. And he basically made the announcement that the rapture was going to happen on a podcast that is hosted by twins. And it freaked me out, and I haven't stopped having nightmares yet. But he said not only was the rapture going to happen, he said he was 1,000,000,000% sure the rapture was going to happen. And then the rapture did not happen. And as we talked about last week, it was kind of amusing to watch people on TikTok and elsewhere who were telling people the rapture was totally going to happen. And I was very curious how they were going to react after it didn't. And I have seen reports that some of them, very few of them publicly question why they believe something so ludicrous. But there you go. That was expected. But the question that I had the entire time, and it went unanswered last week, is, well, what about the preacher who said this thing and the one who appeared on the podcast and said he was 1,000,000,000% sure the rapture was happening? What does he say now that the rapture did not happen? Well, that's the update I wanted to share with you, because that preacher went back on the podcast, and to their credit, the twins basically said, hey, what gives? You told us the rapture was going to happen. We trusted you, and you were wrong. So what the hell? I will play the clip for you of what he said, but I need to explain his argument to you right now. What he's saying is that, you guys, I got those dates, September 23rd, 24th, because I was interpreting the Bible, or someone I was listening to was interpreting the Bible. But you see, in the 1500s, we changed to the Gregorian calendar. And therefore, when I was looking at the Bible to get the dates, I was off by a little bit because the calendars have changed. So, you guys, it wasn't September 23rd and 24th according to our calendar. It was the 23rd and 24th according to like the old ancient times calendar. And whoops, I forgot to adjust. That is seriously his argument. And it is as dumb as it sounds. Here, watch it for yourself and enjoy it.
And the last time you were here, you assured us 1,000,000,000% that we would not be here today because of the rapture.
Like when you come over to our calendar straight from the 23rd and the 24th of September 2025 in the Julian calendar, it takes you to the 7th of October. You know, some say the 7th and the 8th, 7 and the 8th of October. I'm 1,000,000,000% sure that the rapture is going to happen on the 23rd and the 24th of September 2025. But when you cross over straight from this Feast of Trumpets to our Gregorian calendar, it will put you on the 7th and the 8th of October.
So there you go. The rapture is still going to happen on September 23rd and 24th, of the old calendar, but you got to adjust by like 2 weeks. So it's going to happen on October 7th and 8th. See, you guys? He's still right. He still has it. Do you know how much more viral that clip would have gotten if he said it's going to happen October 6th or 7th, 6, 7? He didn't take that bait. He's sticking with the biblical prophecy, which totally says it's going to happen last week. And then when you adjust, it's next week. And we're going to play this game again next week. He's going to have to come back and explain himself. And again, like any preacher who is dumb enough to put a date on the prediction you are going to have, you at some point, if you don't do it far enough away in the future, you are going to have to explain how you got this one wrong. As I said last week, you don't put a date on a prediction. You just say it's going to happen soon. That's what good grifters know. I'm going to fulfill your promises eventually. Donald Trump's economy is going to work for us later. Don't look at the jobs numbers now. They're going to be fine a year from now. They know how to play that game of lying to dumb people. So the rapture is going to happen. We were just looking at the wrong calendar. By the way, Harold Camping, the guy who I talked about last week, who in like 2011 put out billboards that said the rapture was going to happen on a particular date, he basically played the same game. He said, oh, did I say it was going to happen in May? I screwed up. I meant October. And then by the time October rolled around, everyone was already laughing at the guy. And of course it didn't happen. And as I mentioned, he later formally apologized. I am very curious if this preacher has any plans to apologize when he is proven wrong. And the other thing you might want to remember is that when he made those predictions, you might be curious, like, how big is his congregation? How influential is this guy? Because his prediction of the rapture seemed to go very viral. He must have been speaking to a big group of people. And the answer is no. He doesn't run a church. He doesn't have some online ministry. He's just a dude. That's it. He has no credentials. He's just a guy making it all up as he goes along. But because he says God's speaking through him, there are a lot of gullible people who just fall for it. It's the lesson of religion. There you go. So I don't know. Good news and bad news. The bad news is the rapture did not happen, and it's not going to happen next week. But the good news is there's another chance that maybe the most annoying people you know will disappear next week. We will see. That's it for that update. What other questions you got for this story? I mean, I got to admit, that's actually a pretty creative, if short-sighted, sidestep. Thanks for that donation. Yeah, I will admit, I had not thought, when I was thinking of how's he going to explain himself when this doesn't happen, I did not have, Gregorian calendar, not the Julian calendar in my mind. I honestly don't even know if the adjustment between one and the other is like 2 weeks, which is what he said. But I didn't bother to check that one because I didn't care to go down that particular rabbit hole. Ruh-roh, twins holding him accountable? They came through. The twins came through. Maybe that means they will no longer haunt my dreams. But what is he going to say when the next date is still wrong? I think at that point you go with the, just give me money. That's I don't care what it's for anymore. You know where this is heading. Eventually he's going to have to make that pitch. Are the same people making Rapture TikToks again? Asks Den. And the answer is, I don't know. I haven't looked at those older TikToks of the people who said the Rapture is going to happen because I haven't seen them explain why it didn't happen. And I have not seen them say, oh, it's totally going to happen again next week. But again, if you all see any of those videos, any of those TikToks, please send them my way. I need joy in my life. That will bring me joy. All right, jump into another story here. 1 second. Into the Wild? I have no idea. I don't even know if that's a movie. Ooh, did not know that. All right. Let me talk about a story that may be the one I got the most messages about over the course of this past week. You may have seen this on social media. Basically, last week, when the political world was focused on the Republican government's assault on free speech of late night comedians and the impending shutdown, Donald Trump signed a memo that is ostensibly meant to go after domestic terrorism and organized political violence. And he was signing this memo in the wake of the murder of Charlie Kirk. And the thing I need to show you about this is what it's called, the countering. It's a whole presidential memoranda countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. This may be relevant. It's called National Security Presidential Memorandum, NSPM 7. And this goes on for a while, like a lot of these you've seen him sign executive orders or these memos. Those are not the same thing, but there's a lot of writing. Trump never reads it. Like every time he does the press conference where he's seen signing those memos, he always has to have someone else on his staff explain to the public what the hell he's signing. And Trump always responds like he's hearing this for the first time. And then he signs it and he holds it up for the photo op as if anybody cares. But unlike an executive order, this one is scary. And this is the part that is disturbing. One of the couple parts that is disturbing here. Let's read through this together. There are common recurrent motivations and indicia uniting this pattern of violent and terroristic activities under the umbrella of self-described anti-fascism, which, by the way, is a ridiculous sentence because fighting fascism is supposed to be a good thing that we are all supportive of. But Donald Trump is like, oh, yeah, those anti-fascists, those are the bad people. Okay, go on. ... The anti-fascist lie has become the organizing rally cry used by domestic terrorists to wage a violent assault against democratic institutions, which Trump cares about, constitutional rights, ditto, and fundamental American liberties. Yeah, ditto again. But here, read this. This is the big part. Common threads animating this violent conduct include anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christianity, support for the overthrow of the United States government, extremism on migration, race, and gender, and hostility toward those who hold traditional American views on family, religion, and morality. Whew. Okay, so he is saying, how do we tell who these baddies are? Who are the evil people in our society? Well, common things that really excite these horrible people that we need to stop, they include anti-Americanism. Well, what happens if I'm criticizing the country because there's a lot to be critical of? If you know anything about American history, we've done some very shameful things in our past, in our immediate past. We are doing it right now. Criticizing the country doesn't mean you hate the country. It means you expect better from our country. But Republicans see that as an ingredient for domestic terrorism. He says anti-capitalism, which again, what does that mean for someone who is a democratic socialist? What if you don't like wealth inequality? I mean, even Elizabeth Warren has said she's not against capitalism. She is against wealth inequality and the way rich people just keep getting richer despite not giving a benefit, not paying taxes on it. Is that a bad thing? Who knew? And anti-Christianity is just funny because one, who cares if you're anti-Christian? We have religious freedom in this country. And if you are an atheist, like me, I mean, I've heard plenty of Christians say my mere existence as an atheist is anti-Christian. That saying the things I do, advocating for atheism because I happen to think it's right, is that inherently anti-Christian? I have heard that for decades now. I don't believe that to be the case. I think it's against religion. I don't even know if anti is the right word. I think religion is wrong. I think Christianity is wrong. I think Islam is wrong. That doesn't mean I'm against people who believe it. So the phrase anti-Christianity is very much a loaded term. You know what? I will grant them support for the overthrow of the United States government. Fine. I would agree we shouldn't do that. I just find it hard to believe the Trump administration cares about that, given everything that happened on January 6th. Then they say extremism on migration. So if I like immigrants and I think we should have a good immigration policy, am I an extremist all of a sudden? Because I feel like that's where they're going with this. An extremist on race. So basically, if you support affirmative action, if you believe that the founding of the United States of America has to center around slavery and not what the founding fathers signed in 1776, are you an extremist on race and gender? So if you accept that trans people are people, you're apparently, a possible domestic terrorist. And hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family, religion, and morality. So basically, anyone who's ever criticized conservative Christians, the Duggar family, religious extremism, purity culture, the idea that you need kids to be happy, that you are supposed to have 10 kids or more, otherwise you're not. What are you doing? If you don't like trad wives. And what is traditional American morality? Because basically we've heard what conservative Christians believe morality is, and I just did that whole story on Robert Morris and what he did. So I don't know. I don't really want to take lessons on morality from people who vote for Donald Trump and forgive child sex predators who happen to be pastors, because they do it all the time. But these are the people that the Trump administration now says are potential domestic terrorists. So apparently we got to be on the lookout for all those people. So all of you watching this right now, you're in big trouble. I'm definitely screwed. I'm everything you are and brown. My entire social media feed is about to get arrested. I mean, everything you just read is literally a government attack on people who value comprehensive education, who don't automatically believe that religion is a virtue, who understand that diversity is good for society, that it's a net positive. I mean, maybe you argue all of this is bluster because criticism is not illegal. The government has tools already to go after legitimate threats. But the memo goes on to say what the administration is going to do about all this. And this is where it gets scary. The United States requires a national strategy to investigate and disrupt networks, entities, and organizations that foment political violence so that law enforcement can intervene in criminal conspiracies before they result in violent political acts. Through this comprehensive strategy, law enforcement will disband and uproot networks, entities, and organizations that promote organized violence, violent intimidation, conspiracies against rights, and other efforts to disrupt the functioning of a democratic society. Here's the thing. If there's an organization that is calling for political violence, that's a problem. I am not supportive of that. But look at how this thing is written. They say, if we believe that your organization is disrupting the functioning of a democratic society, so what? An organization that calls for peaceful protests in the streets, like the No Kings March that's happening in a couple of weeks? What if you're filing lawsuits against public schools that are promoting Christianity in the classroom? What if you're fighting 10 Commandments laws to put them up in the classrooms? Is that disrupting the functioning of a democratic society? Because I think the Trump administration and the Republicans who back them would say, yes, you are going against American values, so you're part of the problem, even if you're not calling for violence. And under this memo, they're saying we need to be able to investigate and disrupt you and disband you. They could shut down groups by claiming they are un-American. That is where this thing gets really scary. If you're pushing for church-state separation, criticizing religion, refuting the false beliefs of Christian nationalists, are you going to be shut down? The memo says law enforcement would have permission to do a lot of bad things to you long before the groups have done anything to warrant that kind of scrutiny. So this is not about seeking justice after a group has done something wrong. This is about going after them on the assertion that they're gonna do something wrong. So the person who really brought attention to this is a journalist named Ken Klippenstein. Hope I'm pronouncing it right. But he points out in his article about this memo that this should not be taken lightly. This is a big deal. Look at what he wrote. NSPM 7 is fundamentally a law enforcement directive, and it dispenses with the complications of using the active duty military or the National Guard in pursuit of political violence. It directs the Department of Justice to focus the FBI's approximately 200 joint terrorism task forces to the new mission, so Kash Patel can sic his henchmen on perceived enemies. The FBI network of task forces comprises over 4,000 members, including FBI personnel, et cetera, including special agents, police officers, intelligence analysts, and surveillance technicians. They could spy on the groups. They could send special agents to come after you. It is extremely frightening what this is capable of doing. And Klippenstein writes later on, I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but the plain truth is that the NSPM 7 is a declaration of war on anyone who does not support the Trump administration and its agenda. Yes, it repeats the word violent over and over to purport only to go after citizens who are moved to take up arms, but it also directs monitoring and intelligence collection to map and target the new evildoers. The partisan focus could not be more obvious. And that is what is scary about this. Keep in mind, none of these so-called enemy groups have to commit or support acts of violence to be the target of this directive. If they are seen as undermining Trump or undermining Trumpism, that could be enough. They are going after thought crimes. Like, this is the sort of big government, Republican-endorsed fascism that so many people, unfortunately, are not taking seriously enough. Like, I've seen a lot of liberals, too, talk about how we are on the road to fascism. Like, no, we are already there. This is bad. It doesn't matter to Republicans that a memo like this would be unacceptable if a Democratic president issued it, because, again, conservatives are no longer shamed by hypocrisy. They will look the other way when conservatives commit actual crimes, but they will celebrate memos like this against liberals for committing fake crimes. So, will they use this to go after peaceful protesters or groups that send out warning letters or authors who write about the problem with conservative Christian culture? I also worry, are they going to, here's what I'm genuinely worried about. Do I think they're going to like send FBI goons to your house because you posted something critical of the administration? Maybe not. But you know what I am worried about? That they might use the IRS and weaponize it to take away the tax exemptions for left-wing nonprofit groups and church-state separation nonprofit groups. And if you take away their tax exemption, you are making it next to impossible for them to get money from their donors to keep doing the work that they are doing. That is the thing that is possible and scary. Now, since that memo was issued, one thing that I found is somewhat heartening is this article, which says, where did it go? I'm looking for the part I cared about, and it is gone. Here, let me share this with you. From Newsweek, what is NSPM 7? Over 3,000 nonprofits are sounding the alarm on the new Trump directive. And the thing they say here it is, we won't mince words. No president, Democrat or Republican, should have the power to punish nonprofit organizations he disagrees with. That is not about protecting Americans or defending the public interest. It is about using unchecked power to silence opposition and voices he disagrees with. That is un-American and flies in the face of the Constitution, including the First Amendment bar on targeting organizations for their advocacy. So I appreciate that they're doing this. I would also point out, this is from NBC News more recently, these groups, I'll just say this here, they are banding together in an alliance aimed at protecting one another if they become targets of Donald Trump's ire. And basically, what this article is about is saying that a bunch of these groups say they will work together. If you go after one of these groups and you target them because they're saying something you don't like, the ACLU, for example, says we will provide you with lawyers and our staffers to. The big nonprofit groups are saying we're going to help the littler nonprofit groups and we'll protect you against this president, which is a wonderful thing to see. I just wish they didn't need to do it. So it's hard to know for now how seriously the Trump administration will use this directive, how the administration is going to use it to do his bidding, to know who he's targeting and why. And it is possible nonprofits will challenge any targeting in court. But that's part of the problem here. A lot of nonprofits do not have the staff or the resources or the money to fight everything in court, much less against the government where you need a lot of resources to fight back. And even if they have the resources, they now have to stop the work they're doing and redirect their staff and their money to fight these things, which may be part of the point. I mean, at very least, it could lead a lot of them to say, maybe we should not be fighting these battles that we fight right now. Maybe it's better if we self-censor and just hold off for now. And this is one other thing Ken Klippenstein wrote. NSPM 7 is not just about thwarting violent actors. It is about chilling free speech and association. The directive empowers federal task forces to pursue not only organizations deemed in support of violence, but also funders, officers, employees, and indirect financial supporters, which means donors. Under the framework, even speech or advocacy currently considered protected could be swept into criminal exposure. So what's scary is this whole memo basically went under the radar. It was one of many things Trump signed, and there were other things going on in the national news because the Trump administration just throws shit everywhere, and they know you can't follow everything. So I don't think a lot of people knew this was even happening. But I think when you're codifying authoritarianism under the guise of national security, that is scary. Because what are they doing here? They are redefining dissent as terrorism. They are treating ideological opposition as a pre-crime, as if this is Minority Report. Like the Trump administration is doing something so much more dangerous than their overreach of executive power, which they were already doing. This is weaponizing law enforcement to go after your enemies, to strangle democracy. You are not strengthening it. Like there's nothing violent about criticizing Christianity or religion or capitalism or having any hostility against people with traditional views about family and morality and things like that. Republicans just want to delegitimize entire categories of thought because it goes after them and they don't like it. They can't handle it. They're all for free speech unless you go after them, in which case they hate it. So while people are getting distracted by stupid memes that Trump is posting with sombreros on people's heads, this is a real salient threat from the Trump administration. They are directly calling to use the machinery of the state to go after, to surveil, to break up, to criminalize their enemies. That's how authoritarianism works. They redefine dissent as treason, and then they go after you. So this is not just a symbolic memo. This is justification for state-sanctioned persecution. This is not theoretical. And right now, it seems like the best pushback is just resistance from more people who are openly saying they're not going along with it. I have nothing to do with that No Kings March. I think it's the weekend of October 17th, 18th. I have nothing to do with it. But if you're not already going out and marching somewhere with people, go do it. Go join a local progressive organization. I did that locally. And I mean, those little things are important. And of course, if you have an election, vote for the most progressive option you can vote for. I will stop there for now. That was a frightening story. What else we got here? Give me 1 second, Dan. Yeah, the new Red Scare. Yeah, All they have to do is say you're an enemy without any proof, and they're very much trying to McCarthy this whole thing. It is scary. I just hope fewer people fall for it because we know it's happened before. Trump wants unchecked capitalism. He'd benefit from it a great deal. Absolutely. I mean, just right now this week, they're trying to bail out Argentina for like $20 billion. Why? Because a friend of the administration is a billionaire who would stand to make a lot of profit from it. So yeah, a lot of the things the Trump administration is doing now, they don't care about the government shutdown. They'll be fine because they can keep making money. They can keep grifting off of taxpayers. That is what Republicans do. And not a single Republican in office right now seems to have the audacity to speak out against it in any compelling way. Your atheism is anti-blank makes me think they are anti-freedom of religion. Yeah, I mean, they are. The freedom of religion means I get to not believe while they get to. It does. And I wish they cared about it because they all pretend to care about it. But as we have seen, if you're criticizing Christianity, I mean, just look at the pushback after Charlie Kirk died when people said they're quoting things he said. There were right-wing groups that are like, we're going to tell your bosses to get you fired because how dare you criticize Charlie Kirk by quoting him directly. Don't quote how he used the Bible to say really horrific things. But they don't want democracy. Do they not realize they are the ones who are anti-democracy? I don't know if they do or not, but they don't want democracy. You are right about that. They very much, that's why Donald Trump keeps praising the most dictatorial people in the world. It's why he likes Putin. It's why he likes Modi. It's why he likes Argentina and the guy running that country right now, because they rule without any regard for what the people say or what the people want. Sometimes they just ignore the results of elections, or they just run sham ones, which is Trump's dream. He wants to run sham elections and pull off a Saddam Hussein, I won with 96% of the vote. I really do worry about you and those others brave enough to speak out. I appreciate that. I'm not worried about me, but I do sometimes worry about some of the people I've seen with really big platforms who are so inspiring because they speak out all the time. And I genuinely hope they're safe and have have bodyguards everywhere they go. I think about that a lot, way more than I wish I needed to. I'll go to the protests on October 18th, even though I never go out in public. That's exactly why. And you know what? That's what your sign should say. I never go outside except for right now. All right, I'm jumping to another story. Let me go to something lighter in just a second. There's no way it's 50. No. Shocking. All right. Again, I've been doing a bunch of serious stories. This is not as serious of a story, but it amused me. Have you ever played youth sports? Like if you play soccer, if you play baseball, anything like that, you know that after the game is over, both teams meet up, they shake hands, they say good game, they get off the field, right? So if you live in Minnesota, odds are you probably don't play soccer or baseball as much as you play hockey. They love hockey in Minnesota. And there is a youth hockey league in Minneapolis, and they have been under fire over the past week or two because of how they are trying to run their organization. Here's what's going on over there. In their hockey leagues, their youth hockey leagues, what's been happening over the past couple of years, and it's really developed into a bigger thing, is that after a hockey game is over, the two teams, they shake hands, they say good game, and then a lot of times, maybe one team or both teams, they are at center ice and they do a little prayer together. And it looks like it's player led. Adults are not involved. This is not one of those types of legal issues, but this does create a problem Because imagine this. You are the coordinator for the Youth Hockey League, and you have to schedule as many games as you can. You have a lot of games you need to schedule, but you don't have an infinite number of hockey rinks. So your job is to schedule all these games, but you got to be like, okay, this team, you meet at 8 o'clock, your game is at 8 a.m., you're going to play for 1 hour, and then there's a short break. What happens during that break? You got to Zamboni the ice. The next teams need to be able to get onto the rink so they can warm up. And maybe after like 15 minutes, we're going to start that next game, which goes for an hour. You can picture this because what happens if there is a 5-minute delay after that first game? Maybe it's not a big deal. The second game starts 5 minutes late and continues. But by the time you get to game 7, game 8 of the same day, the delays add up. And this is what was happening in this Minnesota Hockey League. And so over the summer, the board of directors for this youth hockey program, they said, all right, we have a new program that we are going to put in place to try and stop this. And here's what they said over the summer. As discussed at the president's meeting over the summer, and as agreed upon by all of the D10 District 10 Association presidents that were in attendance, all center ice player gatherings are being moved off ice so that the arenas are kept on time. This applies to all 10 scrimmages league games and D10 playoff district tournament games. And they're serious about this. Failure to do this will result in a 1-game suspension for each team's head coach or acting head coach. So all the people running this program, they said, yeah, we're going to do this. They decided that over the summer, and they figured that was going to be a good idea. And that's great. And now they are implementing this program. So they put these minutes up on their website, like, hey, we just met, the leaders met, here are the minutes of our meeting. That item shows up, and people realize, wait a minute, you are moving the center ice stuff off ice? We didn't know you were doing that. Holy crap. I want to be clear. This is not an anti-Christian thing. According to CBS News, look what one a board member said. By the time a circle starts to form or something like it, it really is going to take a couple of minutes. Right at the end of the hour, the ice doors have to open. The Zamboni has to start the cleaning process. They only get 10 minutes. If they are a minute late, the next session is going to start late, said this guy who is a board member. So again, the entire purpose of this new rule is because we don't want to delay the time when games can start. We got to stay on schedule, everybody. So after a game is done, go say congrats to the other team, say good game, get the hell off the ice. If you want to pray on the non-rink part of the arena, go do that. If you want to pray in your locker room after a game, that's fine. No one cares. You know what's even better than that? You could pray anytime you want in your head. No one's going to stop you. But this was the idea. It seems like a sensible way. Just get everyone off the ice, then they could live their lives and do whatever they need, right? But as soon as that new policy was announced, people lost their damn minds. Christians specifically lost their damn minds. This is from a local news article. Check this out. For many families, the decision seemed directly aimed at ending the tradition of post-game prayer circles, which are led by players and typically last less than a minute. It felt like they were just trying to sneak it through as something minor, said some dad whose 2 daughters play in District 10. He explained that after the handshake line, players usually kneel at center ice with arms around each other for a brief prayer before returning to their teams. Which is fine, but do it over there. Don't do it here. Just move 10 feet over and do it over there. No one is stopping you. No one cares about you talking to your imaginary friends after a game. This is another parent. It really loses its meaning when you take that step away from center ice, said a guy whose 4 sons grew up on the ice. Why? Why would it lose its meaning? Let's stick with this for a second. If you are a Christian and you believe in prayer and you think God gives a shit about anything you say, Why would it matter to God if you, instead of doing your prayer here, you did it here? Can God not hear you if you're not on center ice? Does it not count if the world can't see you in the middle of the rink? Explain to me why your prayer loses its meaning unless you're just admitting, listen, this is all about stroking our egos and it's a selfish thing. We want everyone to give us attention and pat us on the back for being good Christians, just like that guy Joe Kennedy did at his stupid football games in the state of Washington, because he wanted to do it after football games where he was a coach, and he wanted to do it at the 50-yard line because God says in the Bible you can only pray on the 50-yard line. Otherwise, it doesn't count and Satan's coming after you. So these people are like, it's got to be on center ice. Otherwise, God doesn't care and we're going to get smoked. I don't understand it for a second. It is irrelevant to me. I heard this from another, I feel like this is a right-wing news outlet, but I don't know about it. These prayer circles are led by the players and are wildly popular. I bet over 80% of each team participates, one tipster told Alpha News. First of all, let's say that's all true. Fine if they're led by the players. Who cares if they're popular? It's irrelevant. Has nothing to do with this. You know what else is popular? Playing a longer game. Getting snacks after a game is done. Who cares? Do it over there. And the fact that this tipster says this, I bet over 80% of each team participates, that means nearly 20% of each team is like, I don't want to be a part of this. And the rest of their teammates are like, you know what we should do after a game for team unity? Let's exclude that kid over there and do our prayer circle on the ice that makes a couple of our teammates feel like crap. Either that or we'll coerce them with peer pressure into joining us. And this other tipster says, anyone who has witnessed these knows the truth. Team prayer circles are respectful, voluntary, and take less than 1 minute. This is not about time. This is about silencing public expressions of faith. No, it is absolutely about time, because even if it takes a minute to say the prayer, how long does it take those kids to form a circle on the ice, then say their minute-long prayer, and then get off the ice? I'm not saying it takes an extraordinary amount of time, but we are talking a few minutes. And those few minutes add up when you are in between games, and you got to get a lot of them into the schedule. That's the purpose here. That's why this is a big deal. So anyway, I don't know why they can't pray on their own, whatever. So after there was a lot of backlash on social media, and after people were like, hey, Minnesota hockey, how dare you be anti-Christian? Donald Trump told us the FBI can now come after you for this. Well, Minnesota hockey decided to release a statement, and it is exactly what you would expect. Minnesota hockey's commitment to religious accommodation. Minnesota hockey affirms its unwavering commitment to honoring and respecting the diverse religious and cultural backgrounds. Yeah, I know you do. What are you doing about that? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, here we go. Currently, Minnesota Hockey District 10 will be pausing its policy regarding post-game on-ice activities for further review. It is our understanding that it was never the intention of the district to discriminate against or prohibit player prayer. Of course that wasn't the intention. They said it wasn't the intention. So they're pausing this policy, which basically means they are saying, all right, if you want to pray on the ice after a game, we're not going to stop you. We're not going to punish a coach if you do it. We'll pause that policy. We'll look into it further. But there's nothing to review. Not only is the policy sensible, they looked at it over the summer and it was a unanimous yes from everyone who talked about it and voted on it. This is not a controversial policy. It's only controversial because a handful of Christians think anything you do is persecution against them. The whole world has to revolve around their rituals. And if you do anything to get in their way, it is heresy. District 10 also put up a statement on their website. District 10 hockey is pausing its end of game policy for further review, as it has caused some confusion with people thinking it was removing prayer. There was no confusion. Everybody knows the district is not trying to remove prayer. What's happening is that Christian zealots are pretending that this is anti-Christian, some anti-Christian policy. It is not. They are not smart, but they know that if they cry persecution, they will get whatever they want. So there's no confusion. Don't call it confusion. Don't act like you need to apologize for everything. I don't understand it. It is unnecessary. But this is what's happening. None of this needed to happen just because some loud voices online are mad about a perfectly rational policy. But this is a reminder of how we live in a society where Christian activists will twist totally normal, practical decisions as if they are assaults on their faith. They do not know the difference between genuine oppression and a slightly minor inconvenience, because again, all that's happening is instead of praying over here, we need you to do it here. That's it. That's all this was going to do. Like there is nothing too small for them to spin into a culture war crusade. For what it's worth, I don't think Minnesota hockey needed to back down on this. I don't think District 10 needed to back down. But these are like volunteer-run organizations. And I think they all worry that they are going to get sued over this. And I don't know that I don't think the lawsuit would be successful. But I do think Christians have enough money to file these lawsuits. And I think there's a genuine concern over whether the law is going to protect you if Christians cry a lot. And so I understand why they may not want to get dragged into that, so they're playing it safe. But I also think that by capitulating here, they are reinforcing this false narrative that if you put any boundary around public displays of faith, it is inherently hostile toward religion. This policy was not hostile toward religion. It's not anti-Christian. But because a bunch of conservative Christians don't know the difference, they just pretend that everything is oppression. Like you sell cakes. Oh, a gay couple wants it? That's oppression. You make websites. Oh, a gay couple might want to hire you to make a wedding website for them? That's oppression. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court, the conservative Supreme Court, has said, yeah, that is really an affront to your faith. I know players were always free to pray. Anyone is free to pray whenever they want in their own minds. But apparently now Christians have the right to pray anywhere and everywhere, whenever they want, even if it makes life harder for everyone else, because they don't care about anyone but themselves. All right, I'm done with this one. What else? What other questions you got here? Yeah, famous Bible verse, right? Was this from Matthew 6 or something? When you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. I mean, this is one of those verses that would be very useful if any Christian actually read the Bible. They don't care. They want to be hypocrites. Hypocrisy is not a problem for conservative Christians anymore. Thank you for that donation. Olivia, thank you for it. Riri Kennedy, nice. Don't people know they can change the channel? I don't think any of these games are played on TV, which actually makes this even worse because, like, who's the audience for these hockey games? A handful of parents? Like, why are you trying to pray to impress them? I don't know why you can't do it in the locker room. Christian, oh, we are so persecuted. I mean, this has been the story for the past like 20, 30 years. Everything done in the name of secularism, not atheism, just neutrality. They treat neutrality as oppression. That's what happens these days. If it's player-led and important to them, the parents and coaches are getting very irritated. I don't even think anyone was getting irritated by it. I mean, this is not like the Freedom from Religion Foundation, for example, was not getting involved with this. I don't think it was about irritation. I think this is not about oppression of religion. This is about logistics. Like, I think the only concern is we have 10 games that have to be played on one rink in one day. And the worry, the thing that has come up time and time again, is that when you get to games 8, 9, and 10, they are being pushed back so much past their starting time. It's really getting frustrating for everyone involved because they can't rely on their schedules. And this was a way to fix that problem. But Christians have to ruin that now for other people. Boo, capitulation. I agree. Unnecessary. Why are we doing it? Our beer league hockey team caused delays for very different reasons. And you know what? How dare you? And you should apologize to everybody. Also, I'm very curious how beer league hockey works. Like, when do you drink? Between periods? On the ice? That could be bad. I'm very curious, though, and I want to learn all about this league. All right, I'm jumping to another story in just a moment. Do not know the answer to that. Jungle Book? No, that's not right. That's Kipling. What's the answer here? I don't know any of your trivia questions. Wait a minute. Ah, it's the same answer. Trick question, not even fair. Okay. Think back to the days when you were in high school and they had morning announcements. How did they do them? Maybe when you were in school, your homeroom teacher or some teacher just read the morning announcements to you. Maybe there was a loudspeaker in your school and the principal said the morning announcements. Maybe you did the Pledge of Allegiance or whatever, took up 5 minutes during a certain period of the day. Maybe if you were at my high school, we had students read the announcements over the loudspeaker every morning. And it was fun. It's like, oh, that's my friend. And they're doing the announcements. I wanted to be one of those kids. I was not selected as one of those kids, which I promise you is not something that bugs me today. But I don't know how many of you know this, but at a lot of high schools today, at some of the bigger high schools where they have TV production studios and things like that, one of the ways they do announcements is that students, whether they're in a class or part of a club that does this, they will make videos, almost like YouTube videos, where they are doing the announcements. And maybe you have students who are like the TV news anchors, and they have a student who's in charge of telling you what clubs are meeting. At a high school I used to teach at, they do it once a week, and the other weeks it's just a loudspeaker announcement. But once a week, they have a student-led production that tells you about what's happening at the school. It's really neat if you haven't seen anything like it. And the reason I bring this up is because at West Orange High School in Florida, in Winter Garden, Florida, kind of near Orlando, that is what they do. They have a daily news program, or nearly daily news program, that is made by students. And so they had it. So a couple of weeks ago, they were airing the daily news program. And I'm going to show you a clip of what played during their morning announcements. Because again, when I talk about these morning announcements, it's not just, hey kids, here's what's happening after school today. It might be student-led segments because they are taught and trained into producing like little segments of interest that might be of interest to the school community. For example, hey, here's an athlete at our school you should know because they're really good at what they do. Or here's something that a class is doing or a club is doing that's really exciting, and we want to treat them like superstars. Let's do a segment where we interview them. Well, this is the segment that aired during the news show, and it was called Witchy Wednesday. And some of this is blurred out because the student who did this, that is irrelevant. But this is what played for about 80 seconds. I'm going to show you about 30 seconds of it.
Good morning, witches and warriors. Today is Wednesday, September 10th, and this is our first episode of Witchy Wednesday. I am here to guide you through your magical midweek journey every Wednesday. To start, there was a new moon yesterday on September 9th, normally regarded as a blank state and a new start. This phase invites introspection and intention setting. Simple things to honor this phase could be to write your intentions and bury them, or just meditate for an energy reset and healing. That's all for today, warriors. Have a wicked Wednesday.
Okay, so that segment was about 82 seconds long in real time. Here's the thing. Was that a promotion of religion? It wasn't mentioned in the segment at all, but it was very clearly promoting Wiccan beliefs. Okay, if I were her teacher and I was in charge of this daily news program, would I have allowed that segment to go in the show? The answer is no, I would not have. The whole thing feels like that student's personal passion project, but I really can't justify why we need to waste everyone's time at the school in watching it that particular day. Now, here's the thing. I don't know if that segment was okayed by an adult or if students just put together the morning announcements and the school runs it and no one really oversees it. I am not sure. I did ask the school. They did not respond to me, and I haven't gotten an answer to that. But I'll be honest, and I think you will agree with me, if a different student did a similar segment promoting Christian rituals that we can all do, I would find that inappropriate. So my point is that segment should not have been in the episode. I don't think it's controversial to say that. Now, pretend you work at a nonprofit organization that keeps tabs on things like this, and someone informs you, hey, at my kid's school recently, this is a segment that played. And by the way, the video's up on YouTube. You could see it for yourself. What would you do? Well, there's a professional way to handle this issue. Here's what you do. You have one of your staffers, maybe one of your lawyers, write up a letter saying, hey, we heard this is what happened. We investigated it. It looks like this is what happened. But if this is true, this actually violates the Constitution. You can't do this because it could be seen as a promotion of religion. Here's what the law says. Here's why you can't do it. So here's what we're asking you to do. And in a situation like this, you would say, if this was an accident, we just need you to acknowledge that this happened and that you're not going to let it happen again. If a staffer said, this is what's happening, then we need you to make sure you tell that staffer, hey, this is inappropriate, and you need to train your staff to make sure this never happens again. That's the sort of letter that groups like the Freedom from Religion Foundation and Americans United send out when these sorts of things happen. Because let's face it, this is not really a big deal, right? Okay, so the right-wing group Liberty Counsel ended up sending a letter to this school district, but they blew this thing out of proportion so badly. Like it was the worst possible act of Christian persecution ever. And I want to share this with you because I want you to see how a Christian organization responded to this, okay? On September 18th, they sent a letter to the school district. It is 5 pages long. And look at this. We write to the district to inform you that, let me back up for a second. This is what's interesting. They don't say we want you to shut down this segment and train your staff so this doesn't happen again. Instead, they make 2 different requests. So back to this. They say, number 1, we want to make sure other students who may wish to share their Christian religious beliefs are not denied an opportunity to do so in a similar manner to the Witchy Wednesday video segment detailed below. And then, number 2, we want to make sure all students and staff who wish to opt out of listening to further episodes of Witchy Wednesday must be afforded an opportunity to do so. So let's talk about this for a second. The right thing to do would have been to say, hey, you're not supposed to do this. Please let us know that you're not going to do this again. Liberty Counsel, which, by the way, that's the right-wing group that represents Kim Davis, that Kentucky clerk who said she didn't want to sign marriage certificates for gay couples. Liberty Counsel says, hey, we noticed you allowed a girl to promote her religion on your show. Now that that door has opened a little bit, we want to burst it open and make sure anybody can promote their religion on your daily announcement show. And also, now that the Supreme Court says kids are allowed to opt out of doing anything at school if it violates their religious beliefs, we want to make sure you are allowing students to say no to watching your morning announcements. Like, it is completely taking a small thing that was a mistake and acting like this is a huge religious discrimination problem, and they're going to come after you unless you allow Christians to do a Christian segment on your show. And here's the thing. I think Liberty Counsel is right on the legal matter. If the school's allowing someone to promote their religion, well, guess what? Now we can promote any religion, whether it's Christianity or Satanism, and you can promote atheism too. But if you have any respect for public schools, if you understand how church-state separation works, the solution is not, hey, you got to open the door to everybody so we can ruin the day for all the kids. It's, hey, you wrongly opened this door, close it, because this is not the appropriate role for you. So here's the other thing about this Liberty Counsel letter. They sent it on September 18th. They said, we need a response from you by September 30th, 12 days from now. That should give you enough time to respond to us. And then guess what they did? On September 22nd, like days after they sent out this letter, they issued a press release. Florida high school promotes witchcraft. Like, I promise you that is not what the high school was doing. I mean, the girl did a segment. The school wasn't promoting anything. But they're saying the high school's promoting witchcraft. Here's what that does when you send out a press release like this. You make it sound like the entire administration at this school and all the teachers there are doing something so anti-Christian. And why do you do this? So your Christian zealot base goes after the people at that school. Not violently, but like sends them letters, harasses them, treats them like crap as if they are enemies of your faith. That's why you put out this press release. And again, just because the segment ran on the show, even though it should not have, it does not mean the district was doing any sort of religious promotion. They screwed up and they got to fix it, but there's no evidence this was deliberate in any way. This whole thing could have been resolved with an email. So here's what this was amusing. On September 23rd, the school district's lawyer wrote back to Liberty Counsel, and he also sent a 5-page letter. And this is amusing. Dear Liberty Counsel, I am in receipt of your letter dated September 18th. We have reviewed the segment in question and confirmed that it did take place. We have since instructed the school to cease Witchy Wednesday segments from the morning announcements. No further segments of this nature will take place. So that's great. That's awesome. That is what should have happened. There's nothing wrong with that. Then the letter goes on to explain why the district is taking this step. Right? The lawyer explains, listen, we know what the Supreme Court has said. We know that morning announcements are an example of government speech. And he says somewhere in here, we cannot constitutionally allow such a segment to continue to take place in the future. And that's fine. And this letter goes on to say, I like this. This guy, the lawyer for the district, basically says, now that that segment's not going to be on the show, your two demands are irrelevant. No, we're not going to allow Christians to broadcast their faith on the morning announcements. And no, students do not get to opt out of morning announcements because of their religion. That's ridiculous. But I promise you, Witchy Wednesday is no more, so everything you wanted doesn't matter anymore. And that's also the right thing to say. But the lawyer closed his letter with something that I really appreciated. Check this out. This is on page 5. Finally, I must express my disappointment with how this matter has been handled. Your letter was sent to me on September 18th, and you wanted a response by September 30th. Yet, prior to your requested deadline to respond, your letter was obtained by local media outlets. I also understand that your organization issued a press release regarding this matter. Furthermore, the front page of your website has the following headline: Florida High School promotes witchcraft, along with a link to a copy of your letter. Basically saying, did you actually want a response from us to resolve this? Or are you trying to pull off a publicity stunt? because everything you're doing says publicity stunt and not we actually just want to fix this problem. The manner in which this was handled was surprising, given that both our organizations share the same goal to ensure that all students have their First Amendment free exercise rights respected, which is a very polite way of saying what I wish he would have said, which is, you guys need to calm the hell down. Why didn't you just give us a call and we could have worked this out in 2 minutes? Instead, you tried to treat this like a fundraiser for your organization, acting like everyone at this district and at this high school were all evil and trying to promote witchcraft. Look, it was a mistake. We fixed it. It is one thing to pretend the district is promoting non-Christianity when the inconvenient truth was almost certainly that the administrators had no idea that segment was going to air during morning announcements. And Liberty Counsel did not even take that into consideration, that maybe the students just made this and it went up and no one knew what was going on. But guess what Liberty Counsel did after getting that letter? They issued another press release on September 24th saying, Florida high school ceases witchcraft presentations. First of all, there were no presentations. There's one segment on a morning show you never would have noticed. And the school said, yeah, we're not going to run that anymore. That is not a presentation. That is a short 80-second segment. But they're like, they ceased their witchcraft presentations, plural, which is a lie, because of Liberty Counsel. What the hell? These people are insane. And my favorite part of this press release is after they go on about how amazing Liberty Counsel is for shutting this down, they have this weird line at the end. Liberty Counsel provides broadcast quality TV interviews via high-def Skype and LTN at no cost. Why are you doing product placement at the end? I don't even know what that's about. But again, these are not smart people here. There's one other thing I want to show you about this story. Liberty Counsel is not done milking this for all it's worth. They did a short audio interview between a staffer and the president or the director of Liberty Counsel. His name is Matt Staver. And I want to play a segment for you where, again, this is after they got the letter from the lawyer. And they are talking about how they stopped this, oh my God, this massive controversy. They stopped it because they know how these public school districts operate. Look at the hyperbole with which Matt Staver speaks.
It's shocking that this kind of thing would be allowed on the closed circuit TV. Again, just use it for announcements. It's kind of like these companies. Just make your product and stop pushing the radicalized LGBTQ agenda. Just make your product. Cracker Barrel and some of these other companies, they realize when they veer off their product that people don't like it. There's a whole common sense group of people out there that say enough is enough. In Orange County, by the way, and in Seminole County, which is the neighboring county, just as school started this year in August, they were complaining about how many vacant seats they had because a lot of people were using the Florida voucher system to go to private and home schools, and they were leaving the public school. Well, this is exactly why they're leaving the public school.
I mean, who, first of all, what parent would say it's okay for their child to do such thing like this? And then who approved this kind of nonsense to go on the morning announcements?
It had to go all the way up to the principal of this high school in Orange County. The principal had to be aware of this.
Do you understand how my brain was breaking listening to these two idiots talk about this entire thing? Matt Staver said he was comparing, again, a short segment that appeared once on a student-run, as far as I can tell, morning news show. He said, stop pushing the radicalized LGBTQ agenda. And then he invoked the name of the Cracker Barrel and suggested Witchy Wednesday is the reason so many parents are taking advantage of vouchers. He said, quote, "This is exactly why the parents are pulling their kids out of public school." No, I promise you, parents are not taking their kids out of public school because one girl had a segment that shouldn't have aired for 80 seconds. Like, these people are insane. He also said at the very end of that clip that this segment had to go all the way up to the principal of this high school in Orange County. The principal had to be aware of this. What are you talking about? Do you think a principal micromanages every single project done in every single class? Of course they don't. They don't have time for that shit. I don't even know if a teacher saw this particular segment, even though I think a teacher should have seen the segment before it aired, but the principal does not have to be aware of this. And the reason that one stood out to me is because Matt Staver has this vendetta against public schools. A lot of conservative Christians hate public education. Linda McMahon, Ryan Walters, they all hate public education, but they very clearly do not know how public schools work. And that's the thing that infuriates me every time they talk about it. They act like all these schools are the same. They act like a principal's watching over every single thing that happens. It's ridiculous. There's no evidence a principal approved any of this, nor is there any reason to believe this series would have continued beyond one episode, even though the girl in that video said, this is the first segment. Like, whatever. They did not prevent an ongoing crisis. So, they're overblowing everything. And Liberty Counsel is a multi-million-dollar nonprofit organization. And so many of these right-wing Christian groups have so much money, and this is what they waste their time doing. I actually would not have minded if Liberty Counsel just sent a letter saying, hey, we heard this aired. It should not have aired. Can you let us know you're going to stop it? And if the school said, yeah, you're right, we will stop it, then you know what? I understand if Liberty Counsel put out a press release that said, hey, we stopped this school from airing a segment that no one really cared about because it wasn't that big of a deal. It's not at all what they did. They have to justify how they are spending gazillions of dollars every year. And the way they do it is by overblowing small things like this. Because these are not serious people. In any case, the district seems to have handled this perfectly. They acknowledged the mistake, they cited the relevant law, they ended the inappropriate segment, and they reaffirmed their commitment to religious neutrality in public schools. That's how it's supposed to happen. The Liberty Counsel shows you just how unserious and dishonest these groups are. They would rather stoke culture war battles and demonize public education by exaggerating really small incidents. They didn't expose any sinister agenda. They just exposed their own bad faith and desperation every single time. Oh, it was infuriating. All right, what questions we got here? They will take any opportunity they can to force Christianity on school students. Yeah, I mean, that is one of the funny things about groups like Liberty Counsel, because, again, they are most famous for defending Kim Davis and literally right now trying to get her case that has been going on for like a decade in front of the Supreme Court in order to overturn Obergefell and make marriage equality no longer a national thing. So what is that other than to force Christian views, their Christian beliefs on everybody? But they got mad because, oh no, some kids had to listen to this segment for 82 seconds. Yeah, the hypocrisy is unbelievable. Can I opt out of math? I view math as a moral evil. Yeah, I mean, they do talk about imaginary numbers and irrational numbers. And really, if they say pi is a certain thing and the Bible says otherwise, who knows? So no, you can't opt out of math. Math is the best thing about school. I mean, if you said history, if you said like gym, I get it. But you can't leave math. School handled it perfectly, in my opinion. Yep, I agree. They did the right thing. Christianity gets called out for promoting itself in schools, claims persecution. Also Christianity calls out other religions for promoting in public schools, cries persecution. Yep, damned if you do, damned if you don't. They're always going to complain about everything. So hopefully these districts have lawyers who actually understand how the game is played. Such drama junkies, just trying to add their narrative and agenda. Liberty Counsel is also the group that every Christmas they put out a list of which stores are saying Merry Christmas and which ones are saying Happy Holidays. And they're basically urging their members to boycott the ones that say Happy Holidays because that is their example of Christian persecution. Not joking. They've been doing this for years. That's how dumb these people are and why they should not be taken seriously. Multi-million-dollar organization. All right, I'm jumping to another story. All right. Does the Wapiti have antlers? Yes. All right. Let's talk about Texas because I recently spoke about how Ryan Walters, the superintendent of public instruction in Oklahoma, has just resigned. Yay. But I feel like Texas is trying to imitate the Ryan Walters version of education now because they want to adopt new social studies standards soon. These are like the baseline things that all public school students from grades kindergarten through 12th grade need to know. They're rewriting those standards and they're going to adopt them next summer. So in theory, you have teachers and historians working on those standards now and updating them so that the Board of Education can vote on it by next summer, and then they will be implemented after that. But the reason this is disturbing is because guess who they brought on to help them figure this all out? They brought on this guy, David Barton, who some of you know who he is, and you're like, oh no, this is a horrible idea. But if you don't know who he is, I will tell you all you need to know about David Barton. Okay, so here's what happened more recently. Basically, Brandon Hall, who is one of the members of the State Board of Education, and another member named Julie Pickren, they put out a letter. He posted it on Facebook, and I will show you a version of this letter here. He basically said, we are bringing on David Barton. I know the font doesn't seem very legible, but this is the best version they got here. But they say Mr. Barton is the president and founder of Wall Builders, an organization dedicated to promoting America's history and heroes, which is a weird way of saying white dudes, because that's kind of all they do. He is a recognized author of numerous works on American history. More on that in a second. And a highly sought-after speaker and lecturer in churches. The State Board of Education previously appointed him as a social studies expert reviewer during the 2010 revision process, and he has advised policymakers on historical matters at every level, from the State House to the White House. Yeah, we know things suck right now, so not surprising. Let's talk about some of the things they're bragging about, okay? The idea that David Barton gives a damn about commitment to historical accuracy, which is something they said in that letter, is very laughable when, if there's one thing you know about David Barton, it's that in 2012, he wrote a biography of Thomas Jefferson that had so many lies in it that his Christian publisher is like, we cannot sell this book because we would ruin our reputation. This is literally the headline from NPR at the time. Publisher pulls controversial Thomas Jefferson book, citing loss of confidence. And they said, the book's publisher said, when the concerns came in from multiple people, and that had weight too, we were trying to sort things out, said Thomas Nelson, senior vice president, ... Were these matters of opinion? Were they differences of interpretation? But as we got into it, our conclusion was that the criticisms were correct. There were historical details, matters of fact, not matters of opinion, that were not supported at all. Which is a very polite way of saying David Barton is lying about everything, and the people who publish the Bible are like, this guy's lying too much. We can't sell this shit. The book of Genesis, we're cool with that. But holy shit, David Barton, what are you doing? So the Christian publishers are like, we can't sell your book full of lies. By the way, the name of that book, The Jefferson Lies. So very appropriate title there. David Barton has also made a career out of saying and just saying the worst things imaginable. Here's just a really quick reminder. This is all from Right Wing Watch, by the way. David Barton says the Bible instructs religious leaders to recruit political candidates for office. Interesting. David Barton praises Hungary's latest anti-LGBTQ crackdown. What else do we got? David and his son, Tim Barton, blast the Smithsonian Institution's obsession with slavery. They think the Smithsonian talks too much about slavery and we should just ignore that. What else is there? Oh, this is a classic from 2016. David Barton, the way you get AIDS now is you have to violate God's standard of sexuality, which is not just a horrible thing to say, it's also factually inaccurate to pretend that AIDS is just a gay thing. But that's David Barton for you because he lies for a living. But the best, my favorite thing that David Barton has lied about is he gets really sensitive when you say he's not a real historian. Because he's not. He's a pseudo-historian, and that's what I've been calling him for years. He gets so mad about that. Because then the question is like, well, what are your credentials, David Barton? Like, do you have a college degree in history? Which, by the way, wouldn't count for much, but that would be something. Do you have a master's? Did you get your PhD in history? No, he has done none of these things. All he is a self-marketer who just passes himself off as an expert, even though he doesn't know shit. And the best thing that he's ever done is he tried to clap back at his critics by saying, hey, he does have a doctorate degree. He has an earned doctorate. Let me show you the video in which he did this. This is also from Right Wing Watch.
Something I've noticed about progressives and liberals is how careless they are in throwing false claims around. For example, I was recently on a national television network where I was introduced as having a doctorate, and progressive instantly ran stories claiming that I don't have a doctorate. That false claim is amusing on so many levels. First, things like health information and tax information and college educational information are fully protected by privacy laws. So they don't know whether I have a doctorate or not, and I've always chosen not to talk about it. Second, just for the record, I do have an earned doctorate. There it is. And third, not only do I have an earned doctorate, I also have 2 honorary doctors of letters from other colleges. And according to West Virginia University, the Doctor of Letters degree is reserved only for individuals who have the highest level of knowledge in their chosen subject matter. So for all of you critics, sorry to pop your balloon, but I do have an earned doctorate.
I know that was a little jumpy, but I remember he posted that video and then took it down quickly. But those jumps, like, those were his, not Right Wing Watch's. But the thing is, he said, he's pointing to his thing in the back. He's saying, I have an earned doctorate. And again, in case you don't know, if you have a PhD, you are like an expert in a particular subject. You have written a dissertation. You might have given like an oral defense of your thesis. And then you earn your PhD after years of hard work and becoming an expert in your field. There is a such thing as an honorary doctorate, which some colleges give to like actors, where it's like, hey, will you come give a commencement address at our school? We want to honor the contributions you have made in your field of work. But if you walk around with an honorary doctorate and call yourself a doctor, you are lying to people. It is a nice certificate, getting an honorary doctorate. It means you've achieved something, but it doesn't mean you're an expert in anything, and it is not the same as an earned doctorate. It's not a doctorate in any meaningful way. And when Right Wing Watch covered this years ago, this is what they said about his video that I just showed you. The degrees displayed behind Barton are difficult to read, but the one to which he seemingly points when claiming that he has an earned doctorate is clearly from Pensacola Christian College, which, according to his own biography, is one of the places from which he received an honorary degree. To make things even more confusing, Barton then bizarrely added that according to West Virginia University, a Doctor of Letters degree is reserved only for individuals who have the highest level of knowledge in their chosen subject matter. So for all of you critics, sorry to pop your balloon, but I do have an earned doctorate. But that's not an earned doctorate. Barton's reference to West Virginia University came from an article about honorary degrees. And the school says a Doctor of Letters is an honorary designation. So David Barton had lied to a bunch of people by claiming he had a doctorate. He does not. He hasn't earned shit. So that's David Barton for you. He is nothing more than like a marketing guy who convinced gullible Republicans that he's an expert in American history, even though he has no formal expertise, he has no formal credentials, and his history is just lying his ass off. Right Wing Watch has covered him for so many years, and I appreciate the work they do in covering him. One of the things that's funny when you watch their coverage of him is they say David Barton gave a speech on this subject, and he lied about this one thing. And we have called him out. We have debunked that particular lie over and over again, but he still runs with the lie because the Christians in his audience are never critical thinkers enough to look into what he is saying. So the only reason he has any credibility is because he's been doing this for a while through his ministry and because a bunch of white evangelical pastors platform this guy. And therefore, he has become popular among Republicans who really hate the idea that kids might learn comprehensive history of any kind because kids might learn America isn't as awesome as you want to believe it is. And it has paid off for him in Texas. Because in Texas, David Barton was the vice chair of the Republican Party of Texas between 1997 and 2006. And as he mentioned in that letter earlier, as the Board of Education member mentioned, in 2010, when they were revising the social studies standards at the time, David Barton was part of the group urging them to make certain changes to those standards. He was so bad at his job. This is the headline from The Guardian at the time. Texas Schools Board rewrites U.S. history with lessons promoting God and guns. That's what David Barton caused. And by the way, even though his contributions are online, let me point to just a couple of things here. This is more recent after they made that announcement about him doing it again. The Texas Freedom Network. Actually, I'm going to jump down for a second. Here's the part I want to show you. When David Barton advised the State Board of Education roughly 15 years ago, he called the fact that racial, ethnic, and religious groups have expanded political rights in American society a false premise, noting his perspective that such advances would not have happened without the country's white majority. So basically, the Civil Rights Act, things like that, are we saying that happened because of African-American activists, because of Rosa Parks, because of MLK? No. The Civil Rights Act was passed by white people in Congress. Therefore, they deserve all the credit. And let's not pay too much attention to the people who marched. Forget the Freedom Riders. Who cares about them? What else did he say at the time? Barton, in his criticism of how schools teach children about prominent historical figures, Barton referred to Colin Powell, a decades-long Army veteran who was the first Black American to serve as U.S. Secretary of State, as a weak choice for a group representing those who have made contributions to society in the areas of civil rights, women's rights, military actions, and politics. Colin Powell, he's not famous enough. Why do kids need to learn about him? And I am not a fan of Powell, but also, come on. He's one of the highest achieving, highest ranking Black Americans, certainly among Republicans. Barton also noted his belief that the late labor leader and civil rights activist Cesar Chavez lacks the stature, impact, and overall contributions of so many others who could be recognized for their participation in the democratic process. So this is what David Barton was doing all this time. He was basically saying, let's not teach kids about any prominent Black people, any prominent Hispanic people, and now they're bringing him on to do it again. The same people who want to put the 10 Commandments in the classrooms. They want to bring David Barton along because they know he's going to rubber stamp whatever the conservative agenda is when it comes to teaching American history. Now, the good news, if there's any good news here, as I mentioned briefly earlier, is that there are some groups trying to sound the alarm about this. The Texas Freedom Network, a progressive advocacy organization, in a statement Wednesday, criticized the decision to appoint Barton as an advisor, whom the group said could jeopardize a process that should be focused on education, not politics. And I appreciate the statement. This appointment is a flashing red light warning that the social studies overhaul appears already to be headed off the rails and into a political swamp of misinformation and distortions. The board members who appointed this phony historian, nice, clearly care more about pushing a political agenda than teaching millions of Texas kids the truth in our public schools. And by the way, the reason this is such a big deal is because when Texas changes its standards, a lot of textbook companies follow suit. They change their textbooks to say whatever Texas wants them to say because Texas has millions of school children. They buy a lot of textbooks. So the textbook companies, Texas is influential. They got to align their books so that Texas will buy them. That's why this is a big deal. I promise you, textbook companies don't give a shit about what Oklahoma is doing because there are fewer children there. But Texas is a big deal. So that is important to know. I also wanted to show you one other thing here, which is that Brandon Hall, the State Board of Education member who nominated Barton for this, look at the way he's promoting this. He appointed David Barton. He's excited about it. That's a campaign promise I made. Today, I kept that promise. Look at what he says at the very end here. I appreciate my colleague member Julie Pickering joining forces with me on this. For more information, see my statement below. Thank you for your attention to this matter. He's ending his little spiel the way Donald Trump ends a deranged 3 a.m. tweet. Because this is all a game for these people. This is all just a stupid game. They do not care about children. They just want to shove their indoctrination, their ideology onto children. And they know they can get away with it because they know the only people who could ever stop them are Republicans, and Republicans do not care about public education or children or anything else that matters. But David Barton is not any credible person's idea of a foremost American historian. He is not a historian. He's not a prominent historian. He's just a Republican's idea of what a smart person is because he talks with confidence. It's the same reason they like going to church and listening to a pastor, because he speaks with confidence even when he doesn't know what he's talking about. Barton represents what white evangelicals want from their leaders. He is a very good bullshitter. That's what David Barton does so well. He doesn't just lie. He repeats those lies over and over until a large segment of his base believes it. It doesn't matter if you debunk him, because everybody debunks him. It doesn't matter because those types of people who listen to David Barton do not care about facts. They don't care about the truth. And if a Christian tells them every founding father was totally a Christian, they're like, well, I guess that's true. I guess we should codify that somehow. The fact that he is part of this committee shows you how little Texas Republicans care about education. Like, they're not just tinkering with their own curriculum, and they're not just hurting the kids of Texas. Because it's Texas, they could be poisoning the well of knowledge for millions of kids nationwide because of how Texas impacts publishers. David Barton is a fraud. His career depends on rewriting history in service of Christian nationalism, and Republicans know it. That's why his appearance on that committee, that's not an accident. It's a deliberate choice to replace evidence with ideology. They want to replace facts with fiction. They want to replace academic scholarship with propaganda. That is why you bring a guy like him on. And it's unfortunate that kids are going to be the collateral damage in all this. I will stop there for this one. What other questions you got here? Fan fiction historian. That is well put. Yes. That's the second Civil Rights Act. Oh, fair enough. It was passed the first time by radical Republicans back at a time when that was a thing, but it was struck down in the early 19th century. Thank you for that correction. I appreciate it. I should have said the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Say a lie often enough, it eventually becomes a truth to someone. And that is the Republican motto. Thanks for becoming a YouTube member, Sean. I appreciate that. All right. I got one more big story for you, and then I'll close it off with a short one after we do this question. And I'm going to... Oh, I don't know the answer to this. Huh, that makes sense. All right. I have another update for you on a story I touched on a while back. I think I talked about it over the summer. Let me go back. I'm going to rehash this story, and then we'll talk about what the update is. In 2022, in the wake of COVID, you may remember Joe Biden and Congress, they passed a $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan Act. And part of that was giving money to states to do infrastructure projects, right? That's when the government was working. West Virginia's Water Development Authority got $250 million of those dollars. And basically, they were tasked with, you guys figure out how to spend that money to promote water infrastructure in West Virginia. And they said they were going to distribute it via the Economic Enhancement Grant Fund. Basically, any nonprofit group, any government agency in the state could apply for money to build things like a water system, a sewer system, stormwater system, or you could go even broader. Maybe it's not water related, any economic development type project. And all of that would be fine. The point is, West Virginia was given $250 million to fix up infrastructure in the state, which is fantastic. And honestly, they need it. And when the agency released its first batch of grant recipients, one of the things that stood out to a lot of people was this right here. Who's receiving this money? I know it's misspelled here, but this is what they released. College of St. Joseph the Worker. That sounds like a Catholic college. What's going on here? And they said, oh, they're based in Ohio, Steubenville, Ohio. That's not even West Virginia. They're getting $5 million. By the way, not only is that the biggest grant amount on this list, that is more than 4 times the second biggest grant recipient on this list. So that's a lot of money. And what are they going to do with it? Well, according to this description, the project consists of the acquisition, construction, and equipping of multiple education facilities for the in-class and on-site training of the 5 major construction trades: HVAC, carpentry, masonry, electrical, and plumbing, materials for training, and whatever you need to make that stuff happen. Okay, I guess if you wanted to give money to a Catholic school, but they were doing secular things with it, like promoting the trades and training workers who could help with infrastructure projects, okay, I think you could get away with that. That's not like promoting religion. The Supreme Court has said that sort of thing is okay at this point. So fine. But it was weird to give this college that much money for a bunch of reasons. And I pointed this out when I made other videos about it. But one reason it was weird is this is the college. Not the auto repair shop right over here, but like the random building that's like a strip mall next to it. That's it. That's the whole college. It was a brand new building in Ohio, and that's it. That's the whole place right there. So it was a brand new school. And this is not a school that has millions and millions of dollars in its budget. It very much felt like they were just tapping into West Virginia's wallet with money intended for infrastructure and water infrastructure specifically to basically build up their own school in a way that may or may not help West Virginians, right? But it got worse because a reporter later got access to their original grant application, and it was bananas. And this is the part that is relevant, like the College of St. Joseph the Worker, the grant proposal. So this goes, I'm not going to read everything here, but they look at what they said they wanted the money for. Construction and real estate development company. They want to build their own real estate company? Why is West Virginia promoting that? That seems weird. They wanted 2.15 million for that. They wanted, education. They want to recruit students, give money to students, create partnerships with tradesmen. All right. Oh, they want to build a new campus for 200 grand, and they'll do it in West Virginia. But again, where's the infrastructure in all this? Why is West Virginia giving them $5 million to build a second campus somewhere else? Like, go fix your sewers. But the biggest one, advocacy activities. We need $1 million for this. What the hell is advocacy activities? They want to create a bioethics certificate for continuing education in medical and psychotherapy fields. Oh, and they want to build a research center in West Virginia to support broadly life-affirming policy in West Virginia. Let me put that another way. They want to create an anti-abortion think tank based in West Virginia. So basically they could write op-eds and they want to put out, they want to do lobbying in West Virginia against abortion. They wanted to make presentations, proposals to the legislature in West Virginia about abortion. How does any of that deal with infrastructure? I don't know. Who the hell approved it? I talked about that in the last video, but the administration in West Virginia approved this grant, okay? At the time, I believe this school was had a grand total of $10 million, or they were hoping to invest $10 million to expand. But now they were getting $5 million as a gift. It was ridiculous. So anyway, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, not getting into all the details. I went into them in a previous video. But after this grant was announced, the American Humanist Association filed a lawsuit with the help of the ACLU, and they sued the Water Development Authority, basically saying, why are you giving a grant to a Catholic school that wants to do Catholic things? You can't do that. And they filed the lawsuit on behalf of their own citizens, who they actually said in the lawsuit, their own members don't necessarily have access. Oh, they said tens of thousands of West Virginians wonder each day where they will get clean water, as it does not run out of the taps in their homes. Basically saying, we're representing West Virginians who need water infrastructure, and you're the organization that's supposed to be helping build water infrastructure. What the hell are you doing? Okay. So, and they also said, by doing this, by giving the grant to this Catholic school, you are violating West Virginia's Constitution, specifically the part that supports church-state separation, and says you can't use public money to promote religion, because you are promoting religion by giving it to this school. Now, the last time I made a video about this, the judge had issued a ruling just from the bench. It wasn't in writing, but he basically said, the West Virginia Constitution says you can't use public funding to support religious education or advocacy. Yeah, so far so good. And then the judge gave the Water Development Authority 30 days to prove it was adhering to the Constitution when they issued this grant. And I don't know how you do that. How do you spin, we want to create an anti-abortion think tank? How do you spin that into something secular? Who knows? But the judge also said, hey, you know that $1.65 million to expand your facilities? I'm sorry. Let me back up for a second. In his bench ruling, the judge said, you wanted $1.65 million to build another campus. And you wanted $1 million for conservative advocacy and the anti-abortion think tank. None of that's okay. You are clearly promoting religion. So the assumption is all of that's off the book. We're not even talking about that anymore. But for the rest of the money, he said that maybe you can find a secular reason for the state to give you that money, but I need the state to convince me that's not going to promote religion. So that's where we left off last time. Last time I talked about this over the summer, the judge said like half the money, no, absolutely not. The other half, maybe, if the Water Development Authority can prove it's secular, it's going for secular reasons. Okay, why am I bringing all this up? Because that judge has just issued his final ruling in this whole case. I will share this with you here. The judge just issued his ruling in the circuit court, and it's that's not the one I wanted. Aha, this is the one I wanted. This is what's depressing here. Check this out. Let me back up before I read this. The judge basically said that the school has promised the state and him as the judge, the school has promised everybody they're not going to spend any of the money promoting religion. That's it. They promised. And so the judge is letting them keep all $5 million. That is news to me. I did not know he was going to go that far or why he would go that far. And this is the part where he tried to explain himself. Defendants, the school, produced to this court an amended invoice. I'm sorry, the defendants are the Water Development Authority. They produced to this court an amended invoice from the college stating that the grant will only be used for the purposes of real estate acquisition, site development, construction, infrastructure improvements, and supplies and equipment for workforce training and whatever else you need to do that. Also, a letter from the president of the college was produced where he acknowledged and agreed that the grant may not be spent on religious advocacy of any kind, nor can the college spend the grant money on teacher or instructor salaries or anything that has not been listed in the grant agreement. So the school said, we're not going to do anything wrong with the money. The president of the college said, I promise we're not going to promote religion. Therefore, and because no portion of the grant will be used or expended for the previously determined unconstitutional purposes of religious-specific student education, enrollment, and advocacy, but instead will only be used in satisfaction of the grant agreement, no question of constitutional law or infirmity remains. Given these circumstances wherein no genuine issue of material fact remains, this court, blah, 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 he's giving them all $5 million because they promise they're not going to use it for religion. First of all, the school's celebrating, as you might imagine. This is what they said to a local media outlet. This is a win for the Ohio Valley. College of St. Joseph the Worker president Jacob Imam said, oh my God, you just got a grant for $5 million from West Virginia, and your first comment is Ohio Valley wins, even though if that includes some of West Virginia, don't say that. This is a win for West Virginia. This is a win for building something beautiful again in a town that needs help. So the school has taken $5 million that could have gone towards sewers, and they're using it to build up their own college. It is absurd. I mean, the bottom line here is that they're getting all this money that, let's say they have $5 million already in the bank. Like they had a budget of $5 million that they could have used to promote whatever it is they wanted to promote. And part of what the school hoped to do is create a new building, expand their campus. Maybe they did want to help more scholarships, so get students at their Catholic school. Well, now that they have this grant of $5 million, I feel like this school, like the people who do the finances for this school are just saying, well, guess what? All that money we wanted to use to expand, let's just steer that toward religious advocacy, promoting the Catholic mission, doing our anti-abortion stuff, because now we can use this $5 million to do the secular stuff. And the judge is letting them do it. That's all that's happening here. The school is just reshuffling all the money they now have in their giant Uncle Scrooge money bin. They shouldn't have gotten the $5 million at all, because when you saw that grant application, the state should have been like, yeah, this is a crappy application. We're tossing it out, and we're just going to hold on to the $5 million until more responsible grants come around. Applications come into our office, and we'll give it to them instead. They could have done that. Instead, they gave it to these people. Then they got sued over it. And now the judge is saying, it's fine. Just make sure you're not promoting religion. And they're saying, oh, that $1 million we wanted to use to promote religion, don't worry, we won't do that anymore because we can just use your $1 million to build a new campus. We will use our previously saved $1 million to do what we want to do with religion. I don't know. How does any of this directly impact development in West Virginia? Who the hell knows? Because nothing matters anymore. It is so maddening to think this is happening, and they're celebrating like they won the lottery. And I know none of this is the fault of the American Humanist Association. They should have brought this lawsuit. I appreciate that they filed this lawsuit. But when I saw their press release about this judge's decision, I was really confused. This is what the AHA said. After court declares that grant to Ohio religious school was unconstitutional, no funds to be spent on religious education. I read that headline first and I thought, oh shit, they won the case in West Virginia and $0 are going to that religious school. Nope, it's the exact opposite, which is that the judge said, hey, that original grant you wrote, that had religious stuff in it. I'm saying no to that. But you can have all the money instead because you told me none of it's going to religion anymore now. Like that, this headline makes it sound like they won something. And I guess technically speaking, the judge did acknowledge that church-state separation is legit and it matters and he's going to follow it. But I don't like this statement that says, we're satisfied. Like, no. I love Fish Stark, by the way. He's a great executive director. But also, we're satisfied that the court found the original grant unconstitutional and maintained that state funds cannot be spent on religious instruction. I mean, yeah, the judge did say the original grant was no good, but also the judge totally said they can have $5 million, which will allow them to expand their religious presence using West Virginia tax dollars. I did appreciate the second half of this comment, though. We continue to question the wisdom of offering any subsidies to a religious school that could easily have its building costs footed by the Catholic Church, one of the world's wealthiest religious entities, while West Virginia families still struggle to access clean water and other basic needs. Yeah, no kidding. That is one of the frustrating things about all this, and I fully agree right there. I don't know. West Virginia's leaders seem to be squandering the very resources that are supposed to be helping their own citizens. And even if a judge says this is legal, I still have a hard time making any logical sense of it. Because the school just did a bait and switch. They rewrote the terms of their own agreement, and it feels like a giant shell game. And all of it just deprioritizes public health, right? This sounds like a failure of governance and oversight. And it shows you how the state's constitutional protections really don't mean much if a court's just going to accept empty promises instead of actual accountability. By the way, the mission of St. Joseph the Worker is to serve the church. That's their priority. And they have a right to have that mission, but it's not to serve the people of West Virginia. They should not have been able to get this money for the things they wanted to do. And I don't think they should be allowed to lie about it and pretend like building a second campus in West Virginia is kind of the same thing as literally rebuilding storm sewers and pipelines and the things you actually need. So frustrating, but there you go. What other questions we have here? In Ohio, though, getting West Virginia grant money, like it's a grant that can go to anyone in the U.S. almost. I think they're based in Ohio, but they said we're working in like the part of Ohio that is really adjacent to West Virginia. So when you help us, we're totally helping you. I mean, one of the things they said in their application, I'm paraphrasing at this point, but they said, we want to recruit students and we want to recruit students from West Virginia because we're going to educate them and train them. And then maybe some of them will move back to West Virginia. And now you have people who are, good in the trades. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with trade schools. None of that is a problem. But the idea, first of all, the idea that people are going from rural states, very rural states like West Virginia, and they go to college anywhere else, you think they're going to come back to West Virginia? I mean, that's just not what happens from a lot of those states. But again, that hypothetical, we want to recruit students from West Virginia, so some of them may come back to you, and that'll be good for you. That's all hypothetical. Why are they getting grant money for that? It doesn't make any sense when there are actual colleges in West Virginia that could be doing this work. There are companies and nonprofits in West Virginia that could be doing this work. Why aren't they getting the grant money? How pissed would you be if your group applied for a grant to do some of this stuff and the state said no, but this college in Ohio gets $5 million? Do they cross their fingers when they promise? No one knows. No cameras in the courtroom. Sewer money, how appropriate. I mean, jokes aside, I love that. I love infrastructure. I love that they were actually having money to build things that people actually need. Because honestly, this is not a sexy thing to spend money on, but it's totally necessary. I want money to rebuild roads and bridges and sewers and things that if it falls apart, we're all screwed. So I like it when government spends money on infrastructure projects and things like this. That's why it's so frustrating that they're spending millions of dollars and giving it to this Catholic college for not really any good reason. Because we know what they want to do with it. They said what they want to do with it, and it's to promote anti-abortion stuff. Are they going to audit this school on a yearly basis? I want my tax dollars accounted for. No. I mean, there's no indication that West Virginia is going to provide oversight to what the school's doing. I'm sure the school has to say, hey, you gave us this money. This is how we're spending it. But it is hard for me to believe they're going to go line by line and like go to the school and double check it's all being used for the right reasons. And also, again, as I mentioned, you could do the budgeting trick and you could just say we're using the grant money for these secular things because we now have the cash we were going to spend on that we can use for the religious things. So even if they did audit it on paper, you could totally jigsaw this thing and make it look like you're only doing secular things, even though that's not what the grant application said. All right, I got one last story for you right after this. This is going to be a quick one, then we're all done. Oh, I got that one. Maine. All right. Finally, tonight, I just wanted to show you a sermon that may be the most disturbing sermon you have ever seen. And the backstory here is that the pastor's name is Philip Thornton, and he is the pastor of a place called Legacy Faith Church in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It's a Pentecostal church. And during a service, I believe it was last weekend, he wanted to make the argument that when you are trying to spread your faith, when you are sharing the gospel with other people, you can't take any prisoners. You got to go full force, no half-assedness when it comes to spreading the word of Jesus. That's the thing he was trying to say. Now let me show you how he did it. And I don't know, maybe you saw the title of this video if you're watching this later, but whatever you think he's going to do to illustrate how passionate and like take no prisoners you need to be when spreading your faith, this is not what you're going to expect. Here's part one.
He cleared the room. He put them all out. He went in like a soldier. Kingdom of heaven suffers violence. Now don't worry, this light's bright, right? There's nothing in the gun, hands off the trigger, right? Light's bright, laser's there. I can get you any one of it. He had to target the unbelief.
Come on, sir.
He had to get rid of the unbelief that was filling the room. He had to clear the room. You have to learn how to clear a room in faith.
Oh my God. That guy took an AR-15 to church. He said it's empty. I don't know enough about AR-15s to know if he actually cleared it, but he set the laser pointer on everybody, and he's like, you got to clear the room. You got to go in hard on this stuff. That lady at the very end that I saw in that particular clip is just sitting and reacting like this is a totally normal thing that just happens. By the way, I know I have seen stories in the past of churches giving away a weapon as a raffle, and it's always disturbing because it tends to happen like right after some sort of mass shooting. I have never seen a pastor point a gun, point an AR-15 at his congregation as if this is the illustration. This is how you need to spread the gospel. Not with a gun. That's just an illustration. But like, you got to go hard. He wasn't done either. This is another section of that same sermon.
Well, please understand that is a principle that needs to be employed when you use your faith. You have to overwhelm your enemy with a violent action of faith. You have got to come in loud and run out the unbelief. You have to get it to submit to you.
Let me ask you a question. If there was a mosque anywhere in America where the imam did this, what do you think the reaction would be? And yet, with this particular sermon, I only saw it on one website, and it's a Christian website that was calling out, like, this is kind of weird, you guys. So hats off to Protestia, which is a very right-wing Christian website. This is one of those, this is Christian privilege for you. If any non-Christian group tried to pull shit like this, it would be massive news everywhere. But because it's a Christian church, I swear no one seems to care. It's so disturbing, everything he is saying. I got one more clip for you from the same sermon. Let's watch this.
When soldiers would go into a room, it wasn't, again, just one person knocking on the door and saying, hello, everybody, I came to meet everybody. No, they came in force, one fluid movement, right? Step to step, interlocked wherever they went, understanding which direction. They understood how to pass instructions forwards and backwards just by hand movements. They didn't have to talk about it, but when they entered a room, they continued to move in that direction. Please understand, this is where the body of Christ could learn some lessons. Because one fluid movement is what God is after.
He is urging them. First of all, he's urging them like, we all have to go in together. We have to like take no prisoners. You got to kick the doors down and clear the room. That's how you got to behave. You don't take no for an answer. And not only did he say all these things, he had a little minion with his own gun to like cosplay this thing with him. I thought Altar Boys had it rough. What sort of job does that dude have? And as some of you are pointing out in the comments, he has his finger on the trigger, I believe. And also, I thought rule number 1 of gun safety is you never point it at anybody, even if you say it's empty, even if you think it's empty. You don't point it at anybody, even in jest, even to make a point. Like, that's just... Why? Why are we doing this? How is this okay and acceptable? Why isn't everyone at that church? And again, this is Legacy Faith Church in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. How is this okay? Why did everyone not walk out of that room? Why is everyone not leaving their church? How do you feel safe in this place if you bring your family to this church? Like, I don't know. Do I not understand gun culture? Do I not understand Christianity? I cannot think of any situation I would be in where a guy like that is making me feel safe in any sort of way. Like, it is so bizarre to me. I don't understand. And again, I know I said this earlier. If any non-Christian group did anything like that, and then posted the video online. And by the way, I watched the YouTube video of this. It doesn't have a ton of views because there's no shame. They're not worried about this thing going viral. They want it to go viral. It's ridiculous. What do you do with this? How? What? I don't know. Just give me a question. I don't know what to say about this other than I had to watch this. So now I need you to watch this because this is insane. That's it. Say it, don't spray it. I don't know if you're talking to me, but that guy too. Yes. I feel like I'm spraying everything at this point. Where did this happen? Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Pentecostal church up there, Legacy Faith Church. That was Philip Thornton. As someone in the military, oh, what the actual hell? You're telling me that's not what you do when you're just hanging out and not in combat? You don't just aim your weapons at each other to teach each other during Bible study? This is terrorist indoctrination. And the weird thing is, if you ask that pastor or anyone in the church, of course they would say, no, he was just illustrating a point. And listen, I have seen plenty of videos where pastors illustrate a Bible lesson in really insane ways. There was one guy a couple years ago who spit, like hawked a loogie in his hand and then smeared it on somebody's face to illustrate a point. That was weird. But even that guy didn't aim an AR-15 at the congregation to talk about how they need to go all in on spreading the gospel. It's messed up, right? It's totally messed up. There we go. That's it for you. I thought I would leave you on a high note. There you go. Thank you. I know it was a late one. Sorry I started late. It was totally worth it. Got to watch the Cubs win. It was fun. I'll be back next week, Thursday, normal time. Thank you so much to Den for helping me out. I appreciate it. And thank you all. And I will see you next week. Have a good one.